Talking about politicians clueless in the face of trouble, another example from today. 12 years ago, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd set targets to end the poverty and disadvantage in so many Aboriginal communities. Just set targets, targets for children in reading and writing and targets for jobs and health. Thing is, big surprise, just setting targets is not enough. Very few of Rudd's targets have been met since, just 2 of them out of 7 this year. So the Morrison government now looks at this and decides the answer is new targets, more targets. So for months, it's Indigenous Australians Minister, Ken Wyatt, has been negotiating with dozens of Aboriginal activist groups, and they've now got together a list of 16 targets, including new ones like cutting the number of Aboriginal criminals in jail. But how would this actually change anything?
The thing that is different this time is the enthusiasm of all to address these targets.
Oh, enthusiasm, that's changed, and consulting even more activists to get them all on board. And that was apparently enough for the Prime Minister, who is always keen on enthusiasm.
We told Indigenous Australians what the gap was that we were going to close, and somehow thought they should be thankful for that. That was wrong-headed. That wasn't the way to do it.
I'm sorry if I sound really cynical about an issue I care passionately about and have for decades, but spin like that makes me sick. But maybe I'm not seeing the right picture. Maybe I'm not in the right frame of mind. So joining me is the panel, including someone who does know a lot about this stuff. Jacinta Price, Director of Indigenous Research at the Centre for Independent Studies, also an Alice Springs Town Councillor, and Graham Morris, former Chief of Staff to Liberal Prime Minister John Howard and wily in the ways of government. Jacinta, more targets, is that going to do the trick?
No, it's not going to do the trick. And the fact that there's not even a target when it comes to reducing family violence, and yet there is a target for the perpetrators of family violence to ensure that they can no longer be, not no longer be, but the fact that they are reducing incarceration, attempting to reduce incarceration, is just, I've been a little bit lost for words today to try and put it all together.
It's exactly what I stumbled on as well, stumbled over to, Jacinta. It's incredible. So let me get it right. No target to cut the crime, but there is a target to cut the number of people serving a penalty for that crime. Graham, that cannot be right.
Look, Andrew, the upside is that you've got a minister like Ken Wyatt, and his heart is in the right place, and he is trying extremely hard to make a difference. And the other slightly different one this time is that the feds and the states and some Indigenous leaders have put all this together. So that's a good start. Targets.
None of them are responsible for anything, Graham. They just sit there to throw rocks from the sidelines. I mean, that doesn't matter. And you may say he's got a good heart. Has he got a good brain? That's what I want to know.
Well, he has a good brain too. Look, money is not the issue. Everyone says more money. It's not. We spend an absolute fortune. And I did a report called Living in the Sunburnt Country, where I went out to many of these on-country communities, having a look at the housing, and got an extra $600 million to go into Indigenous housing, and I don't think it changed anything. Money is not the answer, but starting at grassroots is. I don't care whether it's incarceration, health, or anything, that you need right at the bottom, everyone starting and putting pressure on each other. You know, you think, what is a mum and dad's basic response?
I see the theory, but really, honestly, who needs grassroots participation when it takes, for instance, getting a child to school in the first place? Jacinta, can I just take another example of a target that really worried me, talking about children? To cut the number of Aboriginal children taken into care by 45%. That on its own, I think is dangerous, because it suggests to me that you're leaving more Aboriginal children to be bashed or neglected in situations where if they were white, You wouldn't feel this pressure to cut the number of children you're taking into care. Why else are they being removed if it's not for them being in danger?
Exactly. Look, and the way I read it is twice as many more kids being left in abusive homes, and that simply is not good enough. And, you know, these peak organisations have been funded ever since the Closing the Gap targets were ever introduced to make sure that these targets were being reached in the first place, to deliver for Aboriginal people, to decrease rates of incarceration, to do all the things that these targets are meant to try and achieve. They've had 13 years of this already. So why is it now, you know, there's this supposed enthusiasm from these organisations? The way I see it is...
Now they're enthusiastic.
Yeah, the way I see it is they are going to be funded further, and today's comments by the co-chair of the Coalition of Peak Aboriginal Orgs, Pat Turner, when she said that, you know, we want to tackle welfare by creating more jobs in these Aboriginal organisations, well, to me, that's just shifting where the welfare exists. That's just shifting it to a bureaucratic level and not actually... There's no targets for economic independence for Indigenous Australians. There's no targets that allow for Aboriginal people to have economic sovereignty, if you like. It's all about more welfare, and you know, it's trying to
more jobs and more jobs
it.
in the Aboriginal bureaucracy for tertiary educated, urban raised people identifying as Aboriginal. You know exactly what will happen. Next to nothing on the ground, changing what's just a bleeding crime.